But if you've been here the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about David and how God has used him and how God used him to change. And so, week one, we talked about how God chooses, and He does not choose like the world chooses. He looks at our heart. So when God chose you, He looked at your heart and He decided to place something inside of you, not for you to keep, but for you to share with others. And week two, we talked about the courage it takes to wait. And one thing that stuck out to me is that the strength is not in the starting, it's in the keeping, it's in persevering through adversity. And last week, Pastor Tyler's preached an amazing message, and we learned how to face our giants with the right perspective, with the right weapons, and the right confidence. And he said a phrase that really stuck to me last week, and he said, "We are saved, not soft." That means that we are willing to fight. We're not going to take no. We're going to pray. We're going to intercede. We're going to use the Bible, the Word of God, to fight for the promises that He has placed in our lives. And that is what that means. We are saved. We are the courageous church, not the sleepy church, not the cowardly church. We are the courageous church, and we are going to fight for the promises that God has placed in our lives. So that is what it means to be saved, not soft. But this is what I want you to know today. Today, this life of David, it was not just about defeating the giant and defeating Goliath. But there's more to that. After David defeated Goliath and he cut his head off with his own sword, then it became a period of trial. And how many of you know, if you've read the story, that it wasn't until David was anointed king, it wasn't until the presence of God rested over the life of David that a giant showed up. And so how many of you today know that when you have the presence of God, when you carry the presence of God in your life, giants start showing up? But it is the presence of God in your life, it is what you carry within you that allows you to defeat the giant. And David found himself in a season of a wilderness season. He found himself running because Saul was trying to take him out. Saul got jealous. I call him Salty Saul, He was a crash-out king. He crashed out many times and threw spears at David while he was playing the harp, or, if you've seen an harp, you know what it looks like, or the piano, if you've never seen an harp. There's a piano right there. And he tried to take out David so many times. And I want to tell you that in that time of wilderness, in that time where David was running for his life, literally, David was running for his life, God sent him a friend. And that's what we're going to talk about today. God sending David a friend, and his name was Jonathan. Now, I want to talk to you today about one of my good friends that I have till this day. We bonded together over a person that we necessarily didn't like. You have those kind of friends maybe in high school? Not anymore, because we're adults. We don't do that no more. But I remember in high school, it was very noticeable, especially with the girl in the girlfriends groups. It was like, oh, I don't like her. Now we don't like her. It's all of us. No, it's just one person. It's all of us. Now we have a problem with that person. Well, this is my story of that, the guy version of it. It happened in sophomore year in high school. I was on the swimming team. And I know you might look at me and I might not look like a swimmer. But I promise you, I did not always look this good. I'm just kidding. Hey, David encouraged himself in the Lord, and that's what I'm doing right now. I'm encouraging myself in the Lord. But it was sophomore year in high school, and my friend Neil, we had a problem with this guy named Pedro. Pedro was the guy on the team that was incredibly arrogant. He thought he was the best in the team. He thought he was the fastest swimmer. He thought he was the best looking guy just because he had abs. Now, I've always had abs. I've just never been able to see them. But you could see Pedro's. You could see Pedro's abs. And he had like greenish eyes. He's Brazilian, so he had this just exotic look in his face. And all the girls in the swim team were after him. And all the guys were not, because we were like, bro, like, you're stealing all over our girls. You know what I'm saying? Leave some for the rest of us. And so we had a problem with him. And there's one time, I remember after our swim practice, he mouthed it off to me, and I was really irritated. And being the man of God that I am, I did not clench my fist. You know, I was not like, I wanted to punch him, but I couldn't. I was like, I'm not trying to catch a case here. And so my friend Neil, he was like, what are you going to do about it? You do have that kind of friend that's just like instigate you sometimes? He's like, hey, what are you going to do about it? I dare you. What are you going to do about it? And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to fight him because I don't want to get kicked off the team. But what Pedro didn't know, unbeknownst to him, was that at the sophomore, the year before my freshman year, I started working at a car shop, doing alignments and doing like all kinds of suspension work. And so I always carried a box of tools in my car. And I knew he drove a 1999 gray Honda Civic that was a 5-speed that he always left unlocked. I knew exactly where he parked. And I remember my swim coach let me out of practice early because I said, Coach, I have an appointment that I have to go to. I did not lie. I did have an appointment with Pedro's car. And so I called Neil. I was like, hey, bro, like, coming out, we doing this? He was like, yeah. I was like, what are you going to do? I was like, well, I don't want to put sugar in his gas tank because that will really ruin the whole car. But because I know it's a stick shift, what I did was that I popped the hood. I just unplugged the ground from his battery. I knew the car wasn't going to start. But if you didn't know, push to start was an option on every stick shift car. You just push it and you kick the clutch, and then it starts. It cranks back up. So I did that. I unhooked the battery, I closed the hood, and I just was standing by my car. Leo and I were standing there, and practice was over, and I watched Pedro walk over to his car. He opens the door, he gets in, he cranks it, and nothing. He's like, oh, I don't know what it is. He didn't even bother to check the battery. Joke's on him. So I watched Pedro start his car for 2 hours. He never started the car. And it wasn't until he called his dad came and he jumped them. But when they opened the hood, they had a pleasant surprise that the terminal was unhooked. Who knows who did that, But I tell you that story to say that there are friends that can influence your life, and the quality of your friends and the people you surround yourself matters. And in this case, God gave David Jonathan, which is one of the most incredible friendships of the Bible. And before Jonathan was known for his friendship with David, Jonathan was already marked by courage, humility, and a deep trust in God. If you read a couple of chapters back in the book of Samuel 13 and 14, Jonathan finds himself in a situation where he was between the Philistines and another group of people, and he said, you know what? It's just me and my armor bearer. We're going to attack this people, the Philistines, and we'll see what happens. Maybe God's going to be with us. And his armor bearer tells him, do what you will. Do what's in your heart. God is going to be with us. It says, nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. Man, that is the kind of faith I want some people surrounding me. That, you know what? The Lord can save us by many or by few. Jonathan didn't wait for the perfect conditions to attack. He simply trusted God and moved forward. Jonathan, unlike his father Saul, wasn't driven by fear. He was driven by faith. Jonathan was a kind of leader who inspired loyalty, the kind of man who acted when others froze, the kind of believer who trusted God without needing certainty, without needing assurance. That's who Jonathan was before David entered the picture, and it's why his friendship carried such depth. It's why they became such friends. It was the courage inside of them that allowed them to have such a deep and bonded friendship. And I want to show you 3 qualities that life-giving friends have. And here's why it matters. And I want to tell you the truth today that God uses the right relationships to sustain the calling he has placed on your life. So God uses the right relationships to sustain the calling he has placed in your life. But let me tell you this. Today is not about how you find a Jonathan. Maybe you already started thinking, oh, I know somebody. Today is about how you become Jonathan. How Jonathan shows us the kind of friend every believer is called to become. And in order for us to become a Jonathan, a life-giving friend, it requires sacrifice. 1 Samuel 18, verse 1, it says, after David had finished talking with Saul, he met Jonathan, the king's son. There was an immediate bond between them, for Jonathan loved David. And from that day on, Saul kept David with him and wouldn't let him return home. And verse 3 says, and Jonathan made a solemn pact with David because he loved him as himself. And Jonathan sealed the pact by taking off his robe and by giving it to David, together with his tunic, with his sword, with his bow, and with his belt. Now, I want you to realize what happened right here. I want you to check this out. This is not Jonathan being generous. This is not Jonathan being kind. This is not Jonathan, giving his hoodie, over to David because he has some more at home and David was cold. That's not what's happening here. This is not a casual gift. This is not someone handing them their equipment because they have more. But this is an act of sacrifice. In the old times, clothing and weapons were symbols of identity, of rank, of status, and of future. It was a royal robe, a royal tunic. The sword was different. The bow was different. The armor was different because it was royal. And Jonathan, when he hands over his robe, his tunic, his armor, his bow, his belt, and his sword, he is saying, I recognize the calling that God has over your life. I know that although I'm supposed to be the next heir to the throne, I know that God has already given you the throne. So Jonathan chose to sacrifice his identity, his rank, his status, and his future. What Jonathan was saying was, I recognize the calling of God in your life, and I will not compete with what God has for you. And let me tell you, that's a real sacrifice. Because Jonathan is willingly giving up what is rightfully his. Because he recognizes what God is doing in the life of David. He doesn't cling to his position. He doesn't protect his title. He lays his title down. Because Jonathan knows that the kingdom belongs to God, and he has given it to David, not him. Man, what a friendship right there. Proverbs 13:20 says, walk with the wise and become the wise. Associate yourself with fools and you get in trouble. Thankfully, I did not get in trouble for unhooking the battery of Pedro's car. But that just goes to show, if you hang out with people that are going to enable you and do the things that you're not supposed to be doing, you're going to do bad things. I want to tell you this, that you will never get to a place of spiritual maturity to where you are exempt from peer pressure. You're always going to be subjected to peer pressure in life, regardless of how young or how old you are. There's always going to be some sort of peer pressure. That's why it's so important who we surround ourselves with, who we choose to do life with, who we choose to lend an ear to, who we choose to trust, who we choose to call. a friend. It matters. And healthy relationships require sacrifice. It requires for you to sacrifice your time. It requires for you to sacrifice your convenience. It requires for you to sacrifice your preference. It requires for you to sacrifice your emotional energy. It requires for you to sacrifice your availability. It requires honesty. It requires vulnerability. It requires prayer. It requires patience. And some of us, we want deep friendships, but we're only investing at surface level. We want a friendship, but not inconvenience. We want vulnerability, but not consistency. We want support, but not the sacrifice. And let me tell you that you cannot build covenant-level friendships with convenience-level investment. You cannot build covenant-level friendships with convenience-level investment. Just at the beginning of last month, my wife and I, Lauren, we made the decision and took the big step to buy a home. And that was... And then we got a hailstorm. We all did. We bought the home and it was great. It was such a happy day for us. That means that if you haven't already noticed, we are staying in Missouri. We are here for, however long God wants us to be here until death do us apart. But we bought the home, we signed the papers, and if you remember when you bought your first home, it's so exciting because you're there, you're signing like 40 different kinds of papers for you to agree. Initial here, sign here, date here. You forgot to date here. You need an initial here, not sign it. Okay, well, scratch it. All right, it's 2026 and we couldn't have done it digitally? Come on. So we bought the home and then we went home and then we were looking around and we were like, man, we're so excited. And then it hit, we got to pack. Oh, man. If you've moved in your life more than once, you know the joy that brings packing. You don't know how much stuff you have until you're packing it up. I used to think I didn't have a lot of stuff. And then I started packing, and I was like, I need to get rid of a lot of things. I missed to tell you something, but we closed the home during Easter weekend, and we moved right before Easter weekend. And I would say 10 out of 10 would not recommend. If you can close on a house before or after Easter, that's the best way to do it. But when we were packing, I called my good friend, Pastor Tim, over at the East Side. I called my good friend, Pastor Jackson. I called my good friend, Jason McMullen, that's over at the East Side. And I was like, I got a word of the Lord from you. You need to hear this right now. The Lord is telling me that you need to help your pastor move. You know who your true friends are if they help you move. I can help with a flat tire. I can help with moving, I guess. But you're somebody's friend if they help you move and you help them move. So I returned the favor to Pastor Tim because I had helped him move. And I was like, bro, I'm going to cash this in eventually, right? He was like, yeah, I know. And so Easter weekend it was, But you've heard the saying, like you become the average of the 5 people you spend your time with. But today I want to take it a step further for you and for me. And I want to tell you, show me the quality of your friends and I will show you the potential of your calling. So show me the quality of your friends and I will show you the potential of your calling. Because a life-giving friends doesn't compete with your calling. They commit to your calling. That's what life-giving friends do. They see the call of God in your life. They're not going to compete with it. They're not going to be insecure about it. They're going to commit to the calling in your life, and they're going to walk with you. Here's the truth. I want you to find a friend who can sacrifice to you. But I also want to put some responsibility of you. And I want to ask you, are you that friend for somebody else? Is there someone in your life right now where God is doing something in them, and instead of celebrating, you're competing with it? And instead of making room for their calling, are you protecting your position? See, Jonathan could have looked at David and said, that's my throne, that's my kingdom, but he didn't. He laid it down. He sacrificed. And some of you need to stop competing and start contributing to what God is doing in somebody else's life. Don't just find a Jonathan, become a Jonathan. A life-giving friend, a healthy friend, requires sacrifice. But that's not all they do. A life-giving friend, it's also loyal. And this is the second quality of Jonathan. This is the second quality of a healthy friend, of becoming like Jonathan. 1 Samuel 19:1 says, Saul now urged his servants and his son Jonathan to assassinate David. But Jonathan, because of his strong commitment, his strong affection for David, told him what his father was planning. He said, tomorrow morning, he warned him, you must find a hiding place out in the fields. I'll ask my father to go out there with me, and I'll talk to him about you. Then I'll tell you everything I can find out. Verse 4 says, the next morning, Jonathan spoke with his father about David, saying many good things about him. I want you to know this, that. The king must not sin against his servant David, Jonathan said. He's never done anything to harm you. He has always helped you in any way he could. Have you forgotten about the time he risked his life to kill the Philistine giant, and how the Lord brought a great victory to all Israel as a result? You were certainly happy about it then. Why should you murder an innocent man like David? There is no reason for it all. So Saul listened to Jonathan and vowed, as surely as the Lord lives, David will not be killed. And I want you to notice what Jonathan does here. He protects David from danger. He defends the name of David. Jonathan goes to his father, the king, tells the king the truth, and he reminds his dad, Saul, that David has served him well. In other words, he asks him, why do you want to kill David? He's not done anything to you. If anything, he's helped you out. Jonathan does not manipulate the situation. He does not gossip. He does not slander David. He does not slander the king. He doesn't play both sides. He doesn't rebel. He tells the truth. And that is what loyal friends do. And here's the tension I want us to sit in, that in culture, sometimes we misunderstand what loyalty really means. We confuse it. We confuse loyalty with silence. We think loyalty means I will never challenge you. We think loyalty means I will always take your side. We think loyalty means I will defend whatever you do. I'm going to cover for you. I'm going to ignore all the wrong, and I want to make sure that you don't look bad in front of people. But I want to challenge us this morning. I want to challenge you this morning that in order for you to be a life-giving friend, to be a loyal friend is not loyal to your ego. A loyal friend is loyal to your soul. This is why Proverbs 27:6 says, wounds from a sincere friend, are better than many kisses from the enemy. And I want to say this. Pastor Tyler taught me a phrase, and it stuck with me. And the phrase that he said was, loyalty is not loyalty until it's tested. Loyalty is not loyalty until it's tested. Jonathan had to be tested. Jonathan's loyalty was tested. His dad told him, go kill David. But Jonathan texts David and he says, yo, but dad's crashing out, go run. Go hide. See, loyal friends stand up under the tension. A loyal friend speaks well of you when you're not present. We all know the point and the pain of what it feels like when somebody talks bad about you and you hear it through another friend. Everybody knows the loneliness of not having someone to defend them. Everybody knows the danger of friends who only tell them what they want to hear. But let me tell you that a life-giving friend confronts you to your face and defends you behind your back. I like to say it like this, a life-giving friend is going to stab you in the front and protect you in the back. The truth is that loyalty is found both in correction and confidentiality. And a life-giving friend is loyal. And a life-giving friend sacrifices. And a life-giving friend encourages. And that is exactly what Jonathan did with David. Samuel chapter 23, verse 15 says, one day near H-Town, we're going to call it H-Town. I don't know how to say that word actually, so we're just going to say H-Town. I'm just kidding, it's called Horace. Which doesn't sound right. One day near H-Town, David received the news that Saul was on the way to Ziph to search for him and kill him. And Jonathan went to find David and encourage him to stay strong in his faith in God. Jonathan went to find David and encouraged him to stay strong in his faith in God. And it says, don't be afraid. Jonathan reassured him, my father will never find you. You are going to be the next king of Israel, and I will be next to you. As my father Saul is well aware. So the two of them renewed their solemn pact before the Lord. Then Jonathan returned home while David stayed at Horesh. See, I want you to feel the tension that Jonathan and David were sitting in right now. This is the last recorded interaction between David and Jonathan. After that, Jonathan went and died in the battle. But David finds himself in the wilderness. He's hiding, he's exhausted, he's probably hungry, and he's being hunted by the king and his army. And everything around David is saying, it's over, you're going to die, God forgot about the promise is all going to come to pass, this is it. You should have stayed out in the field with the goats and the sheep fighting the lions. And all of a sudden, Jonathan brings out his iPhone, checks David's location on Find My Friends. If you have an Android, you use Live 360. He pulls it up, he finds the cave, and I love that it says on verse 16, Jonathan went to find David. It doesn't say that he waited for David, he sent David a text message or a smoke signal back then, or he reshared the post, or he, asked somebody, hey, how do you think David's doing? No, he didn't do any of that. He said he went and found David. He did not wait for David to come to him. He goes into the wilderness and finds his friend. And when Jonathan gets there, he doesn't give David a pep talk. Hey man, you got this. I know my dad is mean, but I got you. I promise I'm speaking good of you to the king. He doesn't say, man, I'm sorry you feel that way. He doesn't say, ooh, that's tough. But Jonathan strengthens David by reminding him of God's promise. He doesn't encourage David by reminding David of his accolades, of his performance. Hey, David, don't you remember you killed Goliath? You shouldn't be afraid. Hey, David, don't you remember you fought the lion and the sheep and the bears for your dad's, to defend your dad's sheep? He doesn't say that. He encourages David in the Lord. He says, David, you have a calling of God in your life. He said, David, God has promised you the kingdom, and you will be king, and I will be right next to you. Healthy friends have the courage to encourage. A healthy friendship. We should all aspire to that. We should all aspire to be a healthy friend. We should all aspire to encourage people and not to receive encouragement. And it is sometimes in the wilderness where it's easy for us to forget who God was, to forget who God is, to forget what He's done in our lives. It is when we find ourselves being pulled in many different directions, when we find ourselves struggling to hear from God, that we can forget what He has done in our lives. And it is in that moment when you need a friend, you need somebody to come to you, to come find you and remind you of the promise that God has for your life. And there's a clip I want to show you guys this morning. And I want us to go ahead and play it.
Come on, Mr. Frodo. I can't carry it for you. But I can carry you. Come on!
Now, if you don't know where this clip is from, that's okay. I just watched this movie a couple of days ago. But this is Lord of the Rings. This is Sam, this is Frodo. They find themselves at the end of their road, so it seems like. And I love that Sam tells Frodo these words: I can't carry the ring for you. Does that remind you of someone? Does that remind you of Jonathan? Hey, I can't carry this burden for you. Hey, I don't know what it's like to be persecuted like you are. Hey, I don't know what it is to struggle the way you're struggling. I might not be able to carry the ring for you, but I can carry you. And when I was watching this clip and this movie, I was like, oh man, like, I got to put that in my sermon somehow, some way. But that is literally what Jonathan did for David. He went and found him. He carried him in the wilderness. Now, I want you to pay attention to this, and I want you to know that a healthy friend, a life-giving friend, might not be able to remove you from the wilderness, but he sure can encourage you through the wilderness. He sure can be with you. He sure can remind you of the promise of God. And some of us are in a wilderness season right now, and you've been trying to get through it alone. You've been just fighting the battle. You've been fighting your faith. You've been white-knuckling your faith. You've been fighting on your own, and despite your best efforts, you feel like you're stuck and you're not gaining traction. And as I was preparing this message, I heard God tell me to tell my church, stop pretending you're fine. I did not create you to do this. I did not create you to walk this journey on your own. I did not create you to pretend that you're fine. You were not meant to carry this alone. You were meant to have a friend through the journey. But here's the other side of this. Some of you are not in the cave. You're in a good season. You're in the valley. You're in the mountaintop. Life is good. Your life at home is good. You have the car. You have the job. You got the promotion. Things are steady. And today, God is not asking you to wait for somebody to come find you. Today, He's asking you to go find someone else. And you know who that somebody else is right now. You've seen the things. You've seen their battles. You've seen their struggles. They've gone quiet. They've pulled back. They stopped showing up. And you keep telling yourself, well, I don't want to overstep. I don't want to make them uncomfortable. Well, what if they don't like it? Well, what if? But I want you to notice something, that Jonathan didn't ask for permission. He didn't say, David, can I help you out? He didn't say, David, would you mind if I go to the cave with you? I know where you're at. He didn't ask for permission. He went. I want to tell you today, stop waiting for an invitation to be a good friend. The people who need you the most will never ask. They'll handle it. They'll try to carry it on their own. And I want to tell you this, that a life-giving friend will not let your circumstances have the final word over your calling. A life-giving friend will not let your circumstances have the final word over the calling that God has placed in your life. And we see Jonathan and we see his life, and he was an incredible friend. But Jonathan is pointing us to someone greater. You see, everything that Jonathan did for David, Jesus did for you, fully, completely, and forever. Here's how Jonathan gave up his right to the throne. Jesus gave up the throne in heaven. He put up human flesh and laid down his life on a cross so that we could be brought in to the family of God. See, Jonathan defended David before the king, before his dad. But Jesus is at the right hand of the Father, advocating for you, for me. He never stops advocating on your behalf. Jonathan went out and encouraged David in the Lord. But Jesus gave us, he gave you, he gave me the Holy Spirit so that we can never be without his presence. See, Jonathan was the best friend David ever had. But Jesus is the friend we need. And in John chapter 15, verse 15, he says, I do not call you servants anymore, because the servants do not know what the masters do. But I call you a friend. Jesus calls us friends. And God uses the right relationships to sustain the calling that God has placed in your life. So I want to ask you today, do you have a Jonathan in your life? Or are you in a season where God is calling you to be a Jonathan for somebody else? Or a Jonathania for the female example equivalent of it. I don't know. Listen, if you are here today and you have not made the decision to follow Jesus, I want you to know that he's not waiting for you to get out of the cave and leave the wilderness. He's not waiting on you to have it all together, to be all polished and to be good. We don't get good to get God, we get God to get good. So here's my challenge for everybody in this room. We talked about what Jonathan did. We talked about what Jonathan sacrificed. We talked about how Jonathan stayed loyal. We talked about he went and found David in the wilderness and he encouraged David. And I show you how Jesus did all that for us. But here's what I don't want you to miss in the midst of this moment. Jonathan was not a prophet. Jonathan was not a teacher. Jonathan was not a pastor. He was not called to lead Israel. He was not called to be a king. But he was called to be faithful in the life of somebody else. And God has called you to be faithful in the life of somebody else. And that faithfulness of Jonathan changed the course of the kingdom. Jonathan could have taken out David anytime he wanted, and he didn't. He wasn't going to compete with his calling. He committed to the calling of David in his life. What I want to tell you is that you might never be up here and preach a sermon. You might never lead a ministry. But you can be the reason somebody doesn't quit. You can be the person who shows up when everybody else is walking away. But you can be the friend who speaks the truth when it costs you something. You can be the friend that will commit to the calling of God of somebody else, even if it means putting yours on hold. See, the world is looking. The world is full of people looking for a Jonathan, but the church should be full of people looking to become a Jonathan.